NBC's Dasha Burns is reporting from Doral, Florida, where Trump is holding a rally tonight. Also with us, Brendan Buck, former aide to House Speakers Paul Ryan and John Boehner, and a partner at 7 Letter, as well as an MSNBC political analyst. Vaughn Hilliard is here on set as well. Okay, Dasha, how much buzz is there around the rally tonight, particularly when it comes to the Veep stakes, which we're told could happen any day now? We could hear an answer.
Yeah, any day now. That's the one big question mark left for the Trump campaign. While there are many question marks still on the other side of the aisle, this has been an unusual time for the former president, Chris, where he's sitting back, staying out of the news cycle and watching what's going on with Democrats. But he has been teasing this VP announcement for a while now. What I can tell you is we know that tonight here in Doral, Florida, Florida Senator Marco Rubio will be speaking alongside the former president. He, of course, has been one of the 3 names that have consistently been talked about by sources we're plugged in with. That includes Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum as sort of the top 3 contenders. As far as we know, none of them know whether or not they are the chosen ones. And the former president has continued to say, you know what, it's not final yet. Take a listen to what he said on Fox News last night.
I haven't made final decision, but I have some ideas as to where we're going. We'll see what happens with Biden. You know, in the old days, they would announce the vice president during the convention. Today, with modern day technology, you can't do things that you could have done 50 years ago very easily. But probably a little before the convention, but not much. It could even be during the convention that we'd do it. I'd love to do it during the convention.
One other question, Chris, is how might what's going on the other side of the aisle with President Biden impact what the former president decides to do? There's some speculation that it might have an effect on who he decides will be his running mate. At the same time, regardless of whether it impacts the VP decision, it certainly would impact the strategy for the Trump campaign, who has spent the last many months now advertising against President Biden and really forming their entire campaign around attacking a Biden opponent rather than potentially Harris or somebody else if it were to come to that, Chris.
Dasha Burns, thank you. Okay, Vaughn, I've actually covered a couple of conventions where they announced the VP pick during the convention. I'm not sure what modern day technology, you can't do things you could have done 50 years ago very easily, means. But are you getting any insights from anybody you're talking to? Has he really not made up his mind?
I think it's notable that for Donald Trump a couple days ago, he had suggested he had made up his mind, but now is suddenly floating out that, well, maybe that's not the case. And with Donald Trump, that's not an infrequent thing. But I think if you compare this to 8 years ago, right, it was kind of a natural process of elimination. The final 3 in 2016 for him were Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, and Mike Pence. And I was outside of Mike Pence's home in Indianapolis when the motorcade of Donald Trump arrived to the then Indiana governor's mansion there. And ultimately, the request for him to join the ticket was made. And that's a little different this go around. You still have Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance on the TV airwaves. Doug Burgum is out in public as well here. And so nobody really has been naturally ruled themselves out of this equation yet. If I make one little mention of Doral, I think, you know, just for posterity, I think the last time that he had a campaign event in Doral was 8 years ago when he, at that press conference at the time, he had asked Russia to help look for Hillary Clinton's emails. So 8 years later, Doral still a focal point. We could potentially get that VP announcement tonight. All right, Brendan, if Trump wanted someone who would appeal to, I don't know, undecided, middle-of-the-road voters, independents, even those who are squeamish, maybe about a second Trump presidency, who would be the best choice?
Probably Marco Rubio, but I don't know that that's really the way Donald Trump thinks, or I don't know that it actually matters a whole lot. I'm sort of, having worked for Paul Ryan when he was the VP nominee, I'm not sure that who your VP is really swings a whole lot of votes. I look at it this way. J.D. Vance would clearly be a cementing of Trumpism for the future. It would be saying that this is where the party is headed for the long term, who is someone who has really adopted Trump's populist vision, nationalist vision, whereas Marco Rubio and Doug Burgum are much more traditional Republican establishment-type figures. Now, Rubio, I think, would probably be a little more interesting in terms of appealing potentially to Hispanic voters. We know that Donald Trump thinks that there are big inroads to be made there. Again, I don't know that your VP really does that, but he seems to be thinking that there could potentially be a play there. My sense is it's probably going to be a J.D. Vance because that is such a policy fit. But in that Fox News interview, he did go on to say one of the reasons why he couldn't do it at the convention is it gets a little more complicated than that. And that leads me to think, well, maybe they're talking about the fact that Marco Rubio is also from Florida, and they would need to figure out some place for him to move if he was going to also be on the ticket. Yeah,
and also trying to figure out if really whatever happens with Joe Biden is something that he has to wait for, given your point, which I think a lot of people and history tells us that, VPs don't often make much of a difference. But having said that, you could almost see Donald Trump's wheels spinning, because we know that he would prefer to run against Joe Biden than someone who is younger and potentially already in the polls, maybe showing some strength against him.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a race where they're running against both. I mean, they're very happy to run against Joe Biden. But one of the reasons they like running against Joe Biden is they're going to make the argument that he's not going to last 4 years if he were president. That's something you hear a lot on the right already, and that Kamala Harris would be even worse policy-wise, that she's much more liberal. So I imagine you're going to hear a little bit of both. This is going to be coming, especially for the near term, where they don't know who it's going to be. I think they're happy to have a VP candidate who can go toe-to-toe with Kamala Harris on some of her policy preferences as well.
Okay, so let me ask you about the How to Win 2024 newsletter, because I know you wrote some stuff in there, including that Biden may have accidentally stumbled upon a way forward. In a Trumpian move, the president is now presenting himself as an underdog, taking on the Washington elite. But he is someone who's pretty much been a lifer on Capitol Hill. Do you think that's going to work?
Yeah, I think it's a little disingenuous for sure. And the fact that most voters, Democratic voters, think he's too old. So, take it with a grain of salt. But my point is Joe Biden was sleepwalking into an election landslide loss. It did not appear that he understood what was necessary to win this race. And the stakes were, in his Stephanopoulos interview, saying that as long as he gives it his best try, that's all that matters. Obviously, that's not all that matters. And if the Democrats in his own party coming after him wake him up to the stakes here in this election, and he runs the rest of this race like he's got a chip on his shoulder, then potentially we could have a situation where at least he's got a fighting chance. To win, you have to be able to fight. And it seemed like, especially that first week, he had no fight left in him. But suddenly this week, the last few days at least, it has seemed like it is broken through to him that he's going to have to get up off the mat and do something about this to reclaim his position. So I still think he's an underdog. But if at least he's got a foil, someone to motivate him, someone to put a chip on his shoulder, that's probably the best thing that he could hope for right now.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.